Hey guys, have a good evening. Welcome to the episode number 7 of our beloved SIT meetup. Great. So now today we have two awesome sessions. Session number 1 is how to train your performance dragon with our great speakers Linda Bopp and Alexandra Petri. And the second session is dynamic image optimization with imgproxy, hosted on our own STACKIT AppCloud. The speaker for this session is Andreas Lehr. I will be the moderator for today. My name is Felix. I will always have a look on the YouTube live chat, and also we have after our sessions a small 5 minutes tray to answer every question you want to say. So then I would say, Linda, Alex, the stage is yours. Have fun.
Thank you. Okay, I guess you can hear us now. Okay, hi everybody, welcome to our talk. This is Linda, I'm Alex, and we are passionate JavaScript developers and love all things web. And our daily business is implementing web apps for the enterprise context in the Schwarz group. And for this talk, we expect a little bit of JavaScript web development knowledge, but other than that, lean back and enjoy. So first off, let's talk about dragons. Why dragons? Dragons have more in common with our daily business as you might think. Let's compare the lifecycle of an app with our lifecycle of a dragon. First, it starts with a project idea, that's the egg. Then there are more requirements, it's the egg hatching, the first iteration, dragon toddler, and then the MVP, that's the childhood and the first version of your application. Then new requirements, and in the end, it's established at production. The dragon is an adult and is released into the wild, aka production. And in the end, legacy software, old age of your app, the dragon has seen it all. Our focus today is not how to improve an existing app performance, but rather to give you an awareness of potential risks and performance aspects that are important when you start out with a new app. But nevertheless, we're going to show you a few ways how to debug your app performance. But first, meet our dragon Sparky. Sparky wants to be a lunchbox application when he grows up. He wants to help users to select tasty food for their lunchbox. He also wants to show a lot of options for different types of foods in kind of like an article overview app. And today, Sparky will learn in different lessons what to consider and which options to choose when he starts with his app. Let's accompany Sparky to the academy. This is our Dragon Academy, our demo app. It's a place where dragons are going to learn how to become a performant web application. It's kind of like a high school where he will learn all the life skills he needs to be released into production. So all examples today are from this app. Without further ado, let's dive in. So, performance. What is performance? Web performance is all about making websites fast, including making SOAP processes seem fast. It takes only 50 milliseconds for a user to decide if they want to stay on your page or if they're just gonna leave. So how do we get the perfect performance? Sadly, it depends because it's always a combination of different aspects and different pieces, each with the potential to slow things down. But a few stuff and things and aspects are always the same. So let's talk about 4 main aspects. Overall load time. It's loading your web assets in a sensible order, like latency, how big your files are, how many HTTP requests you have, how many files there are, stuff like that. Secondly, the UI, making the site usable as soon as possible for the user. But what does that mean, making it soon accessible and usable for the user? So buzzwords like performance metrics are the good way to go. So an example is TTI, time to interactive. If you haven't heard of that one, please Google it. It's really important to know about it. Interactivity and smoothness. Does the application feel reliable? Is the scrolling working smoothly? Are the buttons clickable? Are the pop-ups working well? All stuff to consider. And last but not least, perception. How fast the website seems to a user. That's one of the most important aspects. And you have to keep your users engaged, because we all know the situation. You click on a button and nothing happens. And you think about, okay, is anything going to happen? So you need to keep your users engaged and don't leave them alone. So now we know what performance means. What now, Linda?
Okay, next step that we have to take is measuring the performance. It's not okay to have just an opinion what you think your app is in terms of performance, because if you just go by your feels, it's like basically you're blind. You just say it is like that, but you cannot prove it. If you do measurement, it enables you to understand and to get a grasp on the reality. Measurement helps for two kinds of things. First off, it will help you with verification, because if you are just optimizing blindly, it will make the code readability worse probably, and maybe you just didn't make such a difference. So whenever you do refactoring, please measure before and after your changes to improve that the change you did has a noticeable impact on the performance. Another thing is the analysis of your application. When you monitor your app performance, you can see how it changes when you do code changes. And also, it will help you to identify where you can do improvements. There are just a few things to consider when you are doing measurements. First, we recommend to always use the incognito tab, because if you are switching between different apps that you are developing, or if you have browser plugins installed, this might change the results of your measurements, and incognito tabs will have you a clean environment. And whenever possible, please do a production build for your measurements, because the production build is optimized for the user experience, while the dev mode is optimized for you to see the changes of your code really quickly. And lastly, if there are fluctuations in your measurement results, don't be afraid, because there are influencing factors like network conditions that you cannot get hold on. And if you have a few milliseconds of different measurement results, it's not that bad. It's okay. Okay, so let's see how this looks practically. When you want to measure execution time in JavaScript, there's a really neat function that you can use, which is called performance.mark. And what we do here, we set the first mark point, then we perform our calculations, and we use performance measure, give it a name, and say which starting point we want to reference. Afterwards, we can print out our result in the console, and we will see all the relevant details, including the duration in milliseconds. If your code is a little more complex than that, performance mark is really extensible. You can do different measurements at once by just giving different names. Let's see how this looks like. We have the first start part, then we do our first task and say another marking point. Afterwards, some more calculations and have our end mark. Now what we do is, the first one looks pretty much like the slide before, except we say which start point, which end point, and give it a name. And then we make another measurement between the first and the last mark. Now that we have this, because we choose to say both measurements have the name demo measure, we can use just console table to see all the results in a really good comparison, and you can see here how the duration is different. But where this really is beautiful is when you use the performance tab in Chrome DevTools. It will allow you to record your application performance while interacting with it. Let's see how this looks like in reality. First, we start the recording. Then you see here when we click the button, something happens, the loading spinner is displayed. And when you stop the recording, you will see the measurement results in the context of your application behavior. As you see here under the animation row, the loading spinner animation aligns perfectly with the demo measure because it started before and ended after. And you can see also how the app looks like, how the UI changed. And this will help you to provide context to your measurements and find your relevant mark really quickly. There are a few other tools that we want to recommend that you can use. First, we have Lighthouse, which has a performance score metric, And this is a really nice indicator how your performance looks like. And it will also contain some practical tips how to improve your app. Then we have Performance Monitor, where you will see in real time how your app performs while you interact with it. And it will give you some metrics like CPU usage, heap size, and event handlers, and so on. And last but not least, we have the Performance Insight tab. It's rather new. It's like a reduced version of the Performance tab and gives some insight and tips for improvements.
Next up, bundle sizes. Not only data has a size, but also your application code. And so if Sparky is a chunky boy, he just won't fly as fast as a fit dragon would. So bundle sizes are super important. In general, you should always remove unnecessary code in your repository to keep your bundle sizes small. But your libs, you really should check if they are deprecated, if they can be replaced, deferred, or updated. You won't believe how much data you can save when you just update your libs. There is a lib for that. I guess all of us have heard this sentence, but you always have to keep in mind, is the lib really that great or just a huge chunk of data that you don't want performance-wise in your app? But how do you know how big the lib is? The answer is to find out Bundlephobia. It's a great webpage where you can find out the cost of your NPM package. Bundle sizes, download time, and compositions are stuff you can find out there, so go check that out. It's really great. Next up, I want to show you two compressors that are pretty famous. First off, gzip, I guess a lot of you have heard of that. And secondly, Protly. And gzip is a lot older than Protly and was originally designed to compress files. But if you don't use any compressors, gzip is always better than that. The Protly is the newer one, and it's designed for the web. And if you compare it, Protly is up to 64% better than gzip, but better use any compressor than none. And if you want to use a compressor, just add it to your Nginx config and you're good to go.
Okay, Sparky, so with the knowledge of measuring and bundle sizes, let's see how to do a monitoring of your performance. Of course, you don't want to do it always manually, so our goal is how to do it in a pipeline to see that your performance is stable. Just a few steps for that. First off, what we do is install the Lighthouse CI CLI as a diff dependency via npm. And then we just need to create a budget JSON file. Yeah, there we can define quality gates of our performance metrics, limit some timings, how long can the application take, and also make limits for the bundle sizes. And if you don't want to write this by hand, you can use the tool Performance Calculator, which is linked here on the slide. Don't worry, we will share the slides with you after the presentation. Okay, next up, we need for Lighthouse CLI also a config file. And here we can specify assertions like the Lighthouse performance score. But most importantly, in line 13, you see the budgets file linked. Then let's go over to our pipeline. First off, because Lighthouse is a Chrome dev tool, we need to install, make sure that the headless Chrome installation is available. And now we have to run our application. As you remember, we always use the prod build. And with this script that you can copy paste after this meeting, you can collect all the metrics and check against your assertions. And after everything is done, either the pipeline is happy, everything is fine, or if one of the assertions fails, the pipeline will fail and you will immediately know something's not right. You shouldn't merge this pull request.
Next lesson, style. What else does Sparky needs to be good web application? And the first thing the user will see is style. So let's get into the fancy dragon style. First off, images. Images are super important aspects when talking about performance. A lot of time when your performance score is bad, it's because of the images. You need to find the right balance between small file size and acceptable quality. But a lot of times you really don't see a big difference if you just use different image size, image formats and stuff. I would have loved to show you now a comparison between a JPEG image and a WebP image, but PowerPoint doesn't support WebP. So just trust me, it looks exactly the same. You would never know it. And our users don't know that they aren't seeing JPEG. So JPEG is the way to go. But don't trust just me that I say it's smaller. Let's compare it with numbers. If you compare JPEGs to WebP images, WebPs are 26% smaller in file size. If you compare them to PNG, the WebP images are 25 to 35% smaller file size. That's huge. And I guess we all have more than just one image in our web page. So that's just like a lot of stuff you can save. And next up, I want to show you another file format. It's AVIF. If you compare PNG images to AVIF, it's 50% smaller in file size. If you compare WebP with AVIF, it's 20% smaller file size. I mean, you could think, okay, why would I use WebP? Be careful there, because browser support is the thing. AVIF only works right now for Chrome and Opera. You would really need to use the HTML picture fallback, or just use WebP. You just have to decide what your users are going to use. But yeah, I want to put it out there. Next up, a short teaser for the second half of this meeting. Have a look at this talk from Andreas. It's going to be amazing. And it's also about like image optimization stuff. So it's really interesting. Next up, image loading.
So guys, before we continue, we need on our side, please, a short break. We will be live in no time. So take a break, take a coffee, and then come back. We will see us in a couple of minutes again. Hey guys, welcome back to this great format. I said greatness is incoming, and now I will hand over again to our girls. Stage is yours.
Thanks. So image loading. When displaying images, you should always keep in mind your use case. Do you want this image as a banner image and huge, like resolution and stuff, or do you want like a lot of small images, like to have an overhead? In general, always do resize your images because you don't need an image that could have been like 10 meters to 30 meters print out for a football stadium, something like that. Always resize it. But nevertheless, we do want to talk about when we receive images from the backend. Which image size do we want? Keep in mind, you can always store images in your backend cache. We're comparing now thumbnails versus full resolution images. For thumbnails, it would be great for an article overview, like in Sparky's Lunchbox application. You don't need like full resolution, just have the smaller one there. And if the user clicks on one, a new image is going to be loaded from the backend and full resolution. On the contrary, the backend needs two versions of the same image. And all in all, if a user would click on every single thumbnail, more data will be transferred from the front end to the backend and stuff. So that's the contrary. On the other side, if you directly get a full resolution, each image will only be loaded once, and the backend doesn't need to calculate any thumbnails. But on the contrary, the initial loading time is just huge if you got multiple big images. So just keep that in mind, and like always in coding, it depends on your use case. Next up, eager loading versus lazy loading. Eager loading stands for initializing or loading a resource as soon as your code is executed. It has the potential for performance bottlenecks, but the good thing is it has opportunities. If you know you have got a loading screen and the user is going to have to wait, you can eagerly load all the resources you require for the first viewport of your user. Lazy loading, on the other side, is the practice of delaying your load of resources or objects until they're actually needed. It has huge performance saving possibilities and saves just in general system resources. An example would be if you got a long landing page and you want a full resolution images on the bottom of the page. The user won't see that when he first enters the view. So it makes sense to display a placeholder, and when the user scrolls into that view, just load the real data when they're used. So the benefits is just the initial loading time, the bandwidth conversation, system resource conservation, just all the good stuff. You can use lazy loading for images, video, external libraries and stuff. I mentioned placeholders. You can use nothing, but please don't use nothing. That's not a good way of doing things. Better use a placeholder image for a user, for example, or a landscape image thingy. You can also use a solid color. Pinterest does that. You can use SVGs or progressive images. That means you load immediately, just on a low resolution, and then you increase their resolution as the website loads completely. Lazy loading sounds great, right? Sadly, it's not a cure-all. I love it, but it just doesn't always make sense. So keep in mind your use case. For example, a big edge case where it makes problems are offline apps. You just can't prefetch stuff that is meant for lazy loading. So think about which elements your user is looking at the first viewport. Do you need to eager load it or lazy load it? That in mind.
Okay, so Sparky is not all about the looks. He also wants the user to have a great experience and to be very friendly when they interact with him and be fast with it. So let's talk about event handling. First off, when you have the default event handling, what the browser does is it will register the event, it will trigger the event handler immediately. So this is useful if you have, for example, a button click and you want the UI to react promptly. In our example, the problem is we have a text input here, and as you saw in the video, for each input letter that the user typed in, the event handler fired, and the filter was triggered, and the UI was really active. You saw a lot of changes while typing. Also, if you fetch the data from the backend, that's a lot of requests. So we should delay it a little. One option is to use throttle. This will reduce the trigger rate of your events. And in our example, the handler will be only started in an interval of 500 milliseconds. That's not actually nice for input events, because as you see below, while the user was removing the last letter of the filter query, like a B, the handler was in the pause mode. And so now the user is stuck with a filter request of B, and he is not able to see a cookie. That's not nice. So if you want to use throttle, please only use it for scroll and resize events, because there it's not that important that every pixel will trigger the resize. A better option for our input handling is debounce, because while the user is typing and typing and typing and not taking a break, the debounce will wait until the user is finished with typing, and he only needs to make a pause of 500 milliseconds, and then the event handler will be fired. This is really good for input events, and you see after the B was removed, everything is here again, also the cookies, if you scroll down. Okay. So a food application obviously has a lot of options, because there are lots of food options on the table. And Sparky still wants to be fast with providing the user the data he needs. So we should slice this data up to give at least the first few items to the user. There are two options for this, two popular ones. And the first one is using the more feature. We used it on the top. This is a little unusual, but was nice for measuring. So usually you would know it from like a feed of news and messages where you would scroll down, and either you have to click a button, or most commonly it will just load more content when you reach the bottom of the page. And what will happen, you will still have the initial data on the top. It will just enhance it and add chunks on the bottom. So with each click or each scroll you do, more and more items will be loaded. The alternative is using pagination. Initially, we will see the same data as in the more feature, but when you change the page here, you will see another slice of the data, and the first data will be replaced. So it's basically like flipping through a book. The items will be replaced. We want to take a look how this performs when you scale it up. For this, we did some recordings and measured different page sizes of 100, 500, and 1,000 items per click, and measured how it performs with the more feature. As you see here, it's not that good if you have more and more pages, because it will increase the loading time just constantly. For 1,000 items per page, the user will just have to wait for 1 second after just 3 clicks, which is really bad. So more doesn't perform that well if you have lots and lots of new pages loaded. Alternatively, with the pagination, this looks really different. As you may notice, we have to zoom in the first graph in order to see even the data of the pagination good. Yeah, the first initial load takes a little bit of time with the pagination, but everything afterwards will be really fast. As you see here, it doesn't matter which page is chosen, it will just be constantly a really fast loading time of just around 100 milliseconds for even 1,000 items per page. So if the user want to interact with the page by just looking at a part of the data, then pagination might be a really good idea. Okay, so in the web development world, usually you don't just have a front end, you also have a back end. And we want to take a look on how to interact with the back end in a nice way when it comes to big sets of data. There's one thing where a well-implemented database really shines, and this is filtering and sorting big sets of data. I really love the JavaScript filter and map function and also sorting and reducers, but it's about Sparky being performant, so we have to trust our backend to do it nicely. One thing to consider, again, when you have search requests with a user input, either use debounds, or an alternative you can do is using a button search where the user decides when he's done and just clicks it to trigger the backend request. Last but not least, use caching in the backend. This will help a user when he comes back to the page to have a very nice and smooth experience when coming back to your application, so it will be loaded faster.
We're nearly at the end of our Dragon Academy, and Sparky will be released into the wild, aka production. But it makes a difference how your broad environment is going to look. We all have experienced it. The customer says the app does not work, and the devs say, but it works on my machine. What's happening? So you release your precious Dragon to the customer, and the customer is just not happy. So, dear developer, ask yourself the question, could it maybe be that your dev environment is a Dragon paradise, a powerful, unlimited computer, and maybe, just maybe, your customer relies on a crappy phone to use your app? So keep that in mind. We want to talk about like 4 main questions you should ask yourself to just prevent bad surprises. Ask yourself, which platform will the Dragon live at the customer side? Which operating system will the Dragon face? Which network condition will the Dragon encounter? And what kind of data will the Dragon deal with? You can really save yourself a lot of nerves if you just ask yourself these 4 questions beforehand. So test early and often in a customer near device or virtual machine. For example, during development, you can do that with the Chrome DevTools. At the Performance tab, there is a screenshot. You can simulate different calculating powers and a verse network. So do that. What now, Linda?
That's it for Sparky. He has graduated the Dragon Academy. Woo! Sparky is still young, and he might want to look up some of the tips we learned in the Dragon Academy in his daily business. So there's a solution for that. We prepared a free cheat sheet for each graduate, like yourself, with all the tips of this presentation and more. Don't worry, you don't have to read it on the slide. You will get a PDF, and we will share the link after this presentation. So that's it for Sparky. He has learned it all, seen it all. So if you have any questions, he might be eager to answer you now.
Thank you very much, guys. So I think we know how to feed, how to treat, and how to love our Dragon in form of our future front-end development stuff. And now, guys, do you have any questions? Feel free to ask them. Okay, probably I have one question. You talked about the switching or the transformation from PNG JPEG images to this WebP format image. Can you tell us something about where we can do that?
There are a lot of different abilities to do that. For my case, I like the Terminal C web package that you can install, for example, for Mac with Brew, and you could just type in original image and which name the new file should have for the WebP and which file quality. So I mostly use 70 or 80% of the originally quality, and that's totally enough. Nobody ever sees a difference. So that's super easy.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So we have one question in the chat. The question is how to handle correctly the image loads with high resolution images. Can you tell us something about that?
So if you have a high resolution image, you could either load just a smaller version of it first and reload the bigger versions, or you could use a loading animation to at least do something while you wait for the image to appear, which is not the best way, or use a placeholder until it arrives. Yeah, and there are also options like with JPEGs to have it inside the file where it is a blurred version and then the real image appears.
Great. So the question to the audience, especially for you, Xun, I hope I pronounce it correctly. Sorry for that. So did that answer your question? And okay, probably this question will directly hand over to our session number 2. So if you have questions for session number 1, feel free to ask them. We can try to answer them after session 2. So I would say thank you very much for your presentation. It was great as always. And yeah, let's move over to session 2, dynamic image optimization with imgproxy. And I would say, Andreas, the stage is yours.
So, hello everybody. I hope it's working. Great to see you all around the world. So welcome to my talk on dynamic image optimization with imgproxy on STACKIT AppCloud. It's a long title, but it's totally worth it, you'll see. So some words about me. I'm 42. It's an important number. You can maybe spot it again in the talk. I'm passionate for all the things powering the modern web. I'm helping with all the challenges around cloud scaling, reliability, and monitoring. Here's my email address in case you have a question, and you find me at Shakalandi, still on Twitter or also on Mastodon. So images. We heard a lot about images in the talk before. Great. The dragon had different challenges, and images was one of them. So what's so special around images? Images are today and still are the most popular resource type on the web. And they are by far the largest, of course, except Netflix, YouTube, and video streaming stuff. But everything we typically browse in the website, like shopping online, getting information for travel, or buying food, or researching for what ice cream to buy in the Lidl store. So it's an important challenge. What have we done in the past? Or to also maybe encounter as a present solution on imgproxy, or as a subtitle, a little provocant, why we need dynamic image optimization. So each solution we had in the past had its challenges, and I want to briefly sum them up. And maybe you know them because you're still using them. So the first one is the shit in, shit out solution, and it's chocolate, of course, here. And it's from our own production, so you'll see that again. It's a challenge you might be aware of, because what's the problem with the shit in, shit out solution? So usually your CMS editor, who or she is uploading the images, is doing a pre-processing, like Linda told before, with WebP binary, with Photoshop, or with another tool on his desktop. But if not, the images are just delivered as they were uploaded. So you typically, or nowadays, still encounter images with several megabytes or stuff like that. And maybe the next CMS editor, he does proper rescaling, but maybe he chooses to downscale the JPEG quality. And so we encounter huge variations in image sizes and image qualities. Later in the days, we came with the solution to put up CMS restriction, like something like you're only allowed to upload 1 megabyte. You're only allowed to upload this resolution. But this does usually not work, because there are still workarounds that are then in place, and the variations of the image quality data continues. The next thing is typically, when the image is uploaded as it was created, there's metadata included you don't want to have online. So it takes some kind of space depending on the image itself, but could be something like 1 to 5%. And in case of John McAfee, it exposed his geolocation through a social media post where an iPhone photograph of him included all the geodata to locate him. So it's a bad thing to do. It's an overall bad user experience. We don't like that. Does not make sense anymore in 2022. And unfortunately, shit in, shit out is still there in 2022. So last week I encountered a website with 40 megabytes or so, and I checked, it was just loading 5 or 6 images, and all of them had 4 megabytes in size. So it's totally crazy. Imagine you gave a talk in the audience, and then you say, hey, go to this website, and everybody in the room is downloading 40 megabytes. It's breaking the Wi-Fi. It does not make sense. Same goes for mobile connections. It's just taking too long. So if your page has 4 megabytes, which is still kind of large, depending on what the page is delivering, 10 people would consume the same bandwidth as one with 40 megabytes. So it's also a price thing, not only performance thing for the people operating the system. Yes. Then we said somehow goodbye to the shit in, shit out solution. Hopefully, we came up with another solution. I call that one the 42 resolutions solution. Why? Because we came up with the idea, hey, let's just upload the source, and we have this magical batch job in the background, and it creates the 42 solutions we need for the delivery of our application. So we delivered different thumbnail sizes, mid-size image when there's no full screen. Then we had a full screen image. Then we had a zoom image. Then we had this kind for retina displays and stuff like that. And yeah, what was the problem with that? The images, they weren't live. So the CMS editor uploaded, but he was number 42 in the queue, and he had to wait until the 41 images, another one uploaded before, are processed. So he wasn't able, or she wasn't able to publish the article because the images weren't processed. So problem. And next problem, it takes a lot of CPU to pre-render 42 resolutions. Of course, 42 might be a bit provocant, but I've seen quite a lot of different resolutions in different projects. What's also bad? So if you have 42 resolutions of your image, if you want to delete it or exchange it, you have to redo it for the source one and for the resolutions again. You need to do a backup. Yeah, come on and back up everything. It was great fun. Yeah, of course, it was not fun. At least for the CMS user, it was not that nice. The end user experience was a lot better because you had this kind of flexibility on the resolution side. But yeah, next week somebody comes up and say, hey, we have this new iPhone or iPad and we need a new resolution. Then you had to change your code and stuff like that. It does not make sense anymore in 2022. And that's why, yeah, we researched a bit what we could do, and we came up with imgproxy. We call it dynamic image optimization done right, but it's not only image optimization, you can also manipulate images. Some words on imgproxy. It's an open source project by a company called Evil Martians. It's developed in Go. It's using libbips. It's a pretty fast Go library for manipulating images. It comes with 45 features. I guess there are more now in the open source version. All the security features are available in the open source version as well. There's also a paid version available where you can do much more. And there's a cool demo with a NASA lander. It's called Inside. On imgproxy.net, you see it just on top of the page. So some customers using imgproxy, popular ones include eBay, which you might all know, Algolia, it's a search engine, PhotoPucket, a photo sharing service, dev.to, it's basically an open source community for developers, Substack, a popular newsletter service, and of course, we at Schwarz, we use it for at least some popular use cases where I'm coming back to later on. So one more sentence on security. Image proxy is doing on-the-fly conversion, but it's protecting your CPUs from basically DOS attacks and image bombs through an authorization header and an key and salt system. Maybe I'll show that you later on, but it's important thing to know. So the differences between the open source versions, just a briefly overview so that you can see that you can do a lot of stuff with the open source version. So all the image formats are supported. You can resize to any size. You can crop the image, rotate the image, blur it, sharpen, pixelate. There's watermarking possible, so you can put your logo, at least one in the open source version where you want in the image, and there are all security features included. In the Pro version, you can do a lot more like PDF stuff and video conversion. You can do thumbnails from your videos. There are advanced watermarking features and JPEG optimization stuff. It's a really cool thing if you just want to focus on image sizes and formats. You're pretty good with the open source version. But if you're not paying for Pro, do at least some community work like we do now. So I talked about the importance on image sizes. So there's a research by Paul Carvalho. He found out that the images account for 42% of the largest contentful paint element of websites. So, and it's one of the main important lighthouse metrics, the largest contentful paint, and 42% are images. So the next, on the second place are div elements with 27%, and then we have headline elements with 7%. So if you really focus on optimizing your images, there's a lot of room for quick wins on performance of the website. So what can image proxy do to deliver images in a performant way? WebP and AWIF to the rescue. So we heard before that there are these two web formats. What do they do? And what's the difference between them? So although we call WebP still a modern image format, it was released 12 years ago. So it's, not sure how old you are all, but 22, it's 12 years ago. We had the World Cup in South Africa back then, so it was quite some time ago. It has a lot better compression than JPEG and PNG, and it's finally supported in Safari since September 2022. So that's great. 12 years later, you can use it in Safari. caniuse.com/webp, there you can check from which browser version WebP is supported. And please check it because some browsers still are not supporting it. Then there's AWIF or AWIF. I'm not really sure about the pronunciation. It was released 3 years ago. It's the image version of AV1. It's mainly driven by Netflix, but it's currently owned by the Alliance for Open Media. The plan is that it will supersede WebP. It's open source as well, and you should use it when bandwidth is priority. You can also check caniuse.com/awif, where you can see that currently Firefox and Chrome are supporting it. There's no support in Safari. There's no support in Microsoft Edge, although it's basically based on the same rendering engine as Chrome. There are some alternatives like JPEG 2000 and JPEG XL, but they didn't really make it on the market. If I remember correctly, JPEG 2000 is from Apple. I'm not sure on JPEG XL. So what can you do as a developer to have a flexibility? So there's, for example, the picture tag. You can use the picture tag and then say the browser, hey, please use the AWIF of my image, then use the WebP, and then the fallback is JPEG. So if your browser is supporting AWIF, it's just delivering it as a first priority. The second one would be WebP in this example, and then the JPEG as the final fallback. So this would be an easy solution. If you're using a CDN for delivering your assets around the world, typically your CDN is capable of checking the HTTP accept header of your client. The client usually sends, hey, I'm accepting WebP or I'm accepting AWIF, and then the CDN can deliver the image despite the fact your origin application does not support it. So if you're using CDN as reverse proxy, it could handle that as well. So if you're using one, you could also check that. So what you also can do, coming back to image proxy, you can use the image proxy as the carefree solution, because image proxy is also capable of checking your client. So let's call that the carefree solution. And this is also the ice cream we are producing in our Schwarz production and you can buy. So what's our solution? We're using image proxy on STACKIT. We have STACKIT S3, which is an object storage where we're storing the source images. We have image proxy running on STACKIT AppCloud, which is a Cloud Foundry managed instance. We have CDN as cache in front, so we are not using Nginx or something like that as a reverse proxy, but this would be possible. We're using it for on-the-fly conversions of images, and WebP and AWIF, it's automatically done, so you don't have to care about that because we're using CDN in front of it. And we're auto-scaling the instances, and we're not only auto-scaling them up, we're also descaling them down, which is a very important thing. Because otherwise cloud costs are exploding. So please be aware of that. Descaling is also an important thing. Yes, so if you're not using a CDN, you need to use some kind of reverse proxy in front of image proxy. So in order to have some kind of a cache, otherwise image proxy always has to reprocess all the images. It doesn't come with an own cache. It just concentrates on that, what it's good for, and that's optimizing and rescaling images. So a popular use case from our side are the digital leaflets from Lidl and Kaufland. So in every Kaufland country and every Lidl country in Europe, this solution is currently used, and I'll show it you later in the demo. So yeah, I have two flyer screenshots. They are from today. On the left side is from an Kaufland in it's the I guess it's the Czech side, and the right one is from Lidl in Germany. And if you're clicking on leaflets on the front page, then you're coming to a landing page, and then you can check the recent leaflets, and you don't have to use the printouts. Yeah, it's important because paper gets more and more expensive, and that's why, yeah, we're heavily pushing this thing. And yeah, we're basically having a CDN in front of it. We usually do a pre-warming of all the URLs before the new flyer is published, so that there's no, the first request doesn't have to wait on the caching in CDN. So some figures, we store around 2 terabytes of source images. So this is for 1 month here. We have over 5 billion requests, which are answered in CDN, and only 4.7 million or so are really coming back to the origin. So the caching ratio is pretty high, 99.9%. We're delivering around 750 terabytes of traffic only with these flyers in 1 month, and less than 1 terabyte is coming to the origin. So it's pretty cool for the origin to have a CDN in front when you're running that large of application. For this special use case, we're currently using WebP. We still have to enable AWIF because we're still some kind of in a testing phase. But we expect a lot of bandwidth and cost saving switching on AWIF because we achieved a pretty good rate with WebP already. So we had also months with over 1 petabyte of traffic, and it's a really big application. Yes. So how does that look like? So I told you something on autoscaling in our AppCloud. So here you can see on the left-hand side, it's a screenshot from today. So the last time it scaled up was 2 days ago. We have a pretty aggressive autoscaling strategy here. So if the CPU is more than 60%, for 60 seconds, we add 10 instances. So that's pretty aggressive because we don't want to lose connections or customers. And then we're descaling pretty defensively. So if the CPU is dropping below 15% for 60 seconds, we're removing one instance. And then it takes, you can see it in the left, it takes some minutes so that the application is scaling down. And on the top left, you can see that we have a maximum of 100 instances. So we're really able to scale image proxy, and it's running the Docker image. So it's scaling up from 5 to 100 instances and back. And the back is important. Yeah, and it happens all the time. We don't have to care. It's really hassle-free for us, and that's a pretty great thing from the colleagues, and that's cool. So demo time. So I have to de-share for a second, and then I will re-share again. There's my browser tab over here. So as promised, this one here is the page from Lidl. And if you're on the German page, I'm now doing a reload so that you can see that's all live. I'm clicking on prospects. This is the German word here. And here is the flyer from today. And I'm now, for example, here is a smaller version of the flyer loaded. You can see now all the requests going to the image proxy URL. And if I'm now zooming in, what the client or my browser here basically does, it loads on click a larger version of the image. And then we can see it down here, because here there's a smaller version. So take a look down here. It's now reloading here the larger version of the image. And this one here is the scrambled URL from image proxy, and it's delivered as a WebP. It's delivered from CDN, and it has 344 kilobytes. So I'm now adding it here. You can see we're using a pretty larger one over here, and this part is the scrambling from the URL. So if I'm now changing the resolution, this won't work, as the key and the salt for this specific image are not correct. So when I'm doing a reload, and this works. So some more examples. I have an image from our production site over here. Let's check the size. So it's really a live demo, so I hope everything will work out fine. So we can see, okay, this one has currently 420 kilobytes. It's delivered via JPEG. So, and I have spun up an instance on our AppCloud, which is running without the security feature enabled. So I can just post this image to it to show you for a demo purpose. And I'm now just passing the image as it is. And what image proxy is then doing, it's reloading the image with another JPEG quality. Come on. And as we remember, we had this 420 kilobytes before, and it's now just, where is it? I'm deaf, I'm blind. There it is. Should be it's now. One second. It's 284 kilobytes now, so it's a lot smaller. What I can do as well is instruct image proxy, and this does only work now this way because it's the public endpoint. As told, I can say, hey, translate it to WebP, and it's then translated to WebP, and it's now 230 kilobytes. And I could also do an AWIF on the fly, resize, and now the image size should drop, and it's 120 kilobyte. And of course, you know, in my screen sharing, you can't see if there is a lot of changes on the image. But as I can tell you here, this shopping cart in front, where your typical focus is, you won't see much differences on that. You might be able to see some differences on here depending if you're loading the JPEG or not. Image proxy can also, as I told, something like pixelate. So I have now a prepared URL, which is basically pixelating. So you could also pixelate images. And you could also, for example, do on the fly JPEG quality, and it's now JPEG quality 10, for example, for that one. I could now say JPEG quality 1, and then the image quality will drop again. Yeah, you see there's a lot of blurred space now here, and it's not really sharp over here again. So that's it for the live demo part. I'm switching back to the presentation. If questions come up later, then yeah, of course, I'll be here.
So theoretically, we have 2 questions.
Yeah.
So probably we can ask one out of that, and after your session, the second one. So we have a question according to format. So you talked about the 2 formats, WebP and AFIF.
Yeah.
And so do you have a tip which is the better one or the most common one, which is the best to choose for our modern browser environment?
It depends on where you're delivering to. If you have a CDN capable of doing it automatically, or if you're having a reverse proxy and having an internal application, you could just let image proxy decide. It will take a look if the client supports AWIF, and it will just deliver it. And typically, that's the thing I recommend. If you have a use case where having really real images as a priority, you might need to use your images and do something like create a table with all the different qualities and sizes, and have your 2, 3 typical images and compare which one to choose and with which quality. So image proxy per default uses on AWIF a quality of 60%, and that's why there's a huge drop in the size to 100 kilobyte in the demo. And for JPEG, it's 80 or 85. So you really need to play around a bit with the quality and decide depending on what you're doing. If you're doing a photo sharing app where people are ordering pictures after they have seen, maybe your quality needs to be near real life, then you may choose WebP with a high quality. But if you're doing e-commerce or delivering thumbnails, you could choose a much smaller one. And for example, only deliver the zoom image with a high quality, because typically you're just flowing over the images, and you might click on the image to get a larger one, then really load a better quality or something like that. Depends on the application. Long answer.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions?
Yeah, we have a second one. According the scaling of image proxy, the question is how to scale image proxy. I expect memory and CPU being under load.
Yes, so memory is usually not much of a problem, except your source image has 50 or 100 megabyte or something like that. Then you also need to take care of your memory. And our main autoscaling metric is CPU. So if the CPU image rescaling is CPU intensive, and so you need to take care of your used CPU and then scale based on that. And we have chosen 60% and works pretty cool.
Great, thank you very much. No more questions till now. So I think we can go on.
So I have just the key takeaways, which is some kind of the takeaways for you. So just a tip, don't reinvent the wheel. On images, really check WebP and AWIF. Both are really cool. Use autoscaling and descaling in your cloud. And check out image proxy, of course. Yeah. And that's basically it. I have you can use the meetup.assets.schwarz with this insecure plane. Unfortunately, this is necessary, and then just post your image URL. You can test it now with your images if you want, and check the image proxy documentation on all this conversion stuff. But if you just use your image and, for example, add WebP, then you get a WebP image, and add a AWIF, then you get the AWIF image, and it's a public instance. So we might turn it down later or tomorrow, but you can just use it. But please don't do nasty things, because it's not auto-scaling. So anybody should be able to test it who is now listening. And that's it, basically. Thank you. If there are any more questions, I'm open for them.
So yeah, I think we have to redo the first question again. I think it was not answered. Not it was answered, but I think I I read it not that well. So I read it again. So which format is well supported currently by most common used browsers? WebP or AFIF?
WebP, and yeah, WebP is supported in Safari, but it's not a common browser. It depends if you're seeing that one. So if you want coverage for Safari and Microsoft Edge, then you choose AWIF, or you just use the picture tag and let the browser decide.
Great. So does this answer your question? I only asked to be secure again. So second question, is image proxy only ever, so the service, I think, which you currently presented, is image proxy in brackets SIT only available for internal STACKIT usage, or also able to be used for as a public service?
You mean from a customer which is not from SIT? So there's currently no PaaS offering on image proxy. There's a documentation with which you're able to do it yourself, the way we did it on AppCloud and S3, but there's currently no service.
Okay, so
there's no
our
SaaS or PaaS offering.
SIT version is not available.
Yes. There's no, you can't book it as service. If you want to use it as a SIT employee, then there's always a possibility.
Great. So do we have more questions? Okay, great. Then I think we are done for today. We will leave some links, some promised links from the start in the chat. So please feel free to check out the content. And oh, it's a little bit too long. Oops. Okay, I have to update the chat. So if you need something, leave us, or if you want to add something, leave us a comment in the chat. And yeah, I think we are done till now. So I wish everyone a great evening. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.